Welcome today to the Art of Preaching. Brother Osborne, thanks for taking time out again. You are a continual favorite. I get requests continuously. When are you going to have Brother Osborne on the Art of Preaching again? I've been thinking a lot about the preparation of the man versus the preparation of the message or the sermon.
Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me, I'm sure you've thought of this before, but it dawned on me for the first time this week. Moses preached a 4-word sermon. Let my people go. And God spent 10 years per word of the sermon to prepare the messenger for that message.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we talk so much in the Art of Preaching about the nuts and bolts of developing sermons and the structure of a sermon that's effective, et cetera, et cetera. But let's not fail to realize that a lot of preaching boils down to preparing the messenger as much as preparing the message.
Sure.
God spent 40 years preparing the man for a 4-word sermon.
Right. There's no question about that, Brother Ball. I agree with you exactly. A person can't preach. You can tell a man's preaching, and he's not preaching out of his own experience. You know, and the more experiences you get, good and bad, hurtful, painful, because when you get a preacher, you're not just getting a man. You're getting everything the man has been through. You're getting every valley, every mountain, every war he's ever battled. You're getting all of his wins, all of his losses, all of his tears, all of his disappointments. And the more of those that are in the preacher, the better a preacher he becomes. Because now it prepares him. He needs to lose some. He needs to gain some. When Elijah walked by Elijah, he threw his mantle on him. Evidently just kept on walking, because the Bible said Elijah ran after him, and Elijah wasn't a very good mentor, really, to begin with. He just threw his mantle and kept on walking, and he said, "Let me go kiss my my mother and father goodbye." He said, "What's that to me? You want to do it? Go on, and if you don't want to do it, go on." So he turned around, and I got this little analogy I talk to young preachers about. He went home and kissed his mother and father goodbye. And this is something that if you're going to minister, you have to learn to do, or you have to do at least once. Your father gave you your blood, and your mother gave you your flesh. So when he went home and kissed his mother and father goodbye, he's kissing his flesh and blood goodbye. Then he went out and he took the oxen he was plowing with, which was his worldly inheritance, and he slew them and offered them up to God. Then he went and followed Elijah. So unless you're willing to kiss your flesh and blood goodbye, and you're willing to take your worldly inheritance, lay it on the fire, and give it up to have an inheritance with God, then you can walk with Elijah. Then there's several more places you have to walk through that condition you to be able to really pick up the mantle and smite the waters and go through. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into the man. Well, talked about Moses. Obviously had 40 years in Egypt's land, and 40 years on the backside of the desert, 40 years in the wilderness, and he still never made it. So he had 120 years tied up in him, only to lose it all when he smote the rock instead of speaking to it. So there is a lot of preparation that goes into men, because when you get a good preacher, a good pastor, as I said, you're not just getting another man that knows the Bible. You're getting that because that all flavors everything that he preaches. Yeah. All the hurts and all the pains, all the times he's been talked about or ridiculed or made fun of, all of his family problems, internal problems, external problems, and probably, I don't know this really for a fact, but probably God will never use you greatly till he's hurt you deeply. Because out of deep hurt seems to come majesty in preaching that's irreplaceable, because you've been to those places, So I tell you, I'm going to get all the experience. If you've never watched anybody die, you probably don't have a very good altar call to begin with. You need to watch life go out of someone. You need to go to the morgue and have them pull out a teenager on a slab and see a tag on their toe. When you see things like that, you experience those things, comes time for an altar call, you have the urgency about it, because I don't want to watch life go out of you. I don't want to find you in a morgue. I don't want to see you in a halfway house. I want to find you, in prison somewhere. So until you've been to prisons and you've seen what the end results are of people who don't live for God and find themselves tempted and strayed away into the devil's field, that helps your altar call because it puts an urgency about you. Look back at people, you see a tag on their toe. You look back at people and see prison bars in front of you. You look back at people and you see halfway houses. You see opioid addictions on their lives. You don't just see people. Now you see prodigals who have been selfish and now they're desperate and now their lives are going to end up in ruin and wreck. But until you've seen wrecks and ruin, you don't really have an appreciation for what Satan does to people. But when you go experience those things, it changes your whole perspective. Then when you're standing in the pulpit and looking back at people, it gives an urgency and it gives an impetus to your message now because your heart gets involved. It's not just intellect talking to you.
So true.
I've seen it. It's my heart talking to you. I don't want you to end up like that.
That's so true. Well, and what an encouragement that notion can be to ministers, even especially young ministers, I think, that look at their lives, they're going through difficulties, they're going through tough places in life, and they may say to themselves, I don't feel like my ministry is advancing. I don't feel like, I'm doing what God's called me to do. Here I am just on the backside of a desert somewhere, not
Yeah.
realizing they may not be preparing sermons right now, but God
Yeah,
is preparing them. And that
exactly.
is part of God doing something marvelous in their life. They just don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you've never thought about giving up yourself, it's hard to talk somebody else out of it
Oh, that's so
because
good.
you've been to that place. You're
Yeah.
ready to give. Bless me. Have you ever thought about quitting preaching? As you mean today? Uh, I've thought about it more times than I got fingers and toes. But I've taught myself, I've got myself, and God's helped me get out of it. But when you get out of something like that, then it helps you.
Yeah.
It's just only comfort people with the comfort wherein you've been comforted with. So if you've never been comforted with anything, you have no ability to comfort anybody else
That's
because
so good.
it's theoretical on your part. But
Yeah.
if something got you through a situation, then you can help someone else get through that situation. So if you're a young preacher or an old preacher, wherever you are, whatever you have gone through will be your most valuable assets in helping other people get through
Mhm.
that. You're a survivor. You want to talk to survivors. You don't want to talk to people who caved in or backslid. You're talking to a person who has survived. Then that person can comfort you with the comfort wherein they were
Yeah,
comforted.
that's
They
awesome.
can get you through that.
That's awesome. Bishop McCool, I'm sure you've heard him say that it takes 20 years to build a church. And when I first came to Carmel, he told me that. And one of the few times I thought to myself, oh, Bishop, you're wrong. One of the few times, if ever, maybe that might be the only time I've ever thought Bishop McCool was wrong. But as a 21-year-old, I thought, oh, Brother McCool, it's not going to take me 20 years. And how right he was.
Yeah,
But I thought, it takes 20 years to make a good preacher.
yeah, it
It
does.
really
And
does. I mean, I'm
so,
not saying a young man can't be effective. Don't misunderstand.
yeah,
This is going out to a lot of
right,
young men. I'm
right.
just saying there's some aspects of your ministry that just
Yeah,
take time.
yeah. We
And
said,
uh,
go ahead.
and so the encouragement to the young ministers is just be patient and realize that you may feel like your ministry is not taking off right now, or I ought to be preparing more sermons. Well,
Yeah,
God's got you on the backside of the desert preparing you. Just be
yeah,
patient, and things
exactly.
just take time.
He said to Moses, the place where you're going to is not like the place you're coming out of. That is Egypt's land. Egypt was flat land. He said, the place you're going to is a place of hills and valleys.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a lot of ups and downs. Someday you're on the mountain, next day you're in the valley. That's what makes up that place. But that creates a need for God. So he said, I'm going to take you to a place where you're going to need me because this place only drinks water from heaven. You can't irrigate. You can't haul water from, they said, in Egypt's land, you water it with your feet. In other words, you can carry water with your feet. But where you're going to is a land of hills and valleys. One day you're on the mountain, enjoy the mountain view. But you may be in a valley in a couple of days because that's he said, if I shut up the heavens, there'll be no rain, you'll die in the promised land. So this promised land needs rain from heaven. And some days you get a lot of it, some days you don't get much of it. But it's a land that requires a dependence upon God. Because you don't, Egypt doesn't care whether it ever rains or not. They water it with their feet. Like some churches don't care if they ever get the rain or not. They water it with their feet. They water it with their talent, their expertise, their giftedness. They can water it with that. They can have a church service with that. Apostolic churches are a place of hills and valleys, and we need rain from heaven. Without that, you'll never survive in the promised land. But he
That's
said, the eyes of the Lord are upon it from the beginning of the year to
wow.
the end. I don't watch over Egypt. Egypt doesn't need watching. I watch over hills and valleys, and I will give you rain in your season, and you'll have crops, and you'll be blessed because my eyes are on it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
That's awesome. Well, we sure love you. I could listen to you all day long, but I know you got a lot of stuff going on.
I
Get,
love you, Brother Paul. Thank you for
Getting
your
ready for Because of the Times. We'll be praying for you next week. I know
okay.
God's gonna
Take care.
use you there, and still rejoicing over last year, an empty horn. I think about that frequently. It's a
Yeah.
powerful message.
Well,
We love
all right.
we love you.
Take care.
Appreciate
Love
you. Be
you, Brother Paul.
careful. God bless
Thank
you. Bye bye.
you. Bye bye.